Yo guys, what is up? Welcome back to a brand new video here today and some more F1 2020 content. Today I'm bringing you my own personal wheel settings for the F1 2020 game. Again, a full disclaimer, these are what I use, what I like and what work for me. What works for me may not work for you, so keep that in mind in this video. Hopefully I can help a lot of you guys out in terms of, especially if you're a wheel user like I am, so fingers crossed this video can be of some help. If you guys go on to enjoy the video, drop me a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let's jump straight into the settings. So just a few things before we jump into it. I personally play on the PC and my wheel is a Thrustmaster TSPC Racer with the T3PA pedals. I also have a backup wheel which is a Logitech G29, the PS4 version of it, and the settings I use for both of these wheels are exactly the same for me personally from when I have tested them, and yeah, those are the wheels that I have, and the one that I use is the Thrustmaster one mainly. For the game, just like the previous F1 games, on the software, on the Thrustmaster gaming software, I use 360 degrees rotation, and all of my settings within the Thrustmaster program are default. So all the settings that I adjust are simply in game. So all you've got to do and all I've got to do is adjust my wheel to make it 360 degrees rotation when I boot up my PC and basically calibrate my wheel. Once we get past that step, we then go into the game, and you're going to go into the menu, you're going to go into the control settings, and you're going to go to the calibration tab. And when we arrive at the calibration tab, you are going to have a bunch of options, including dead zone, linearity, and saturation. I've got all of these on 0 for the steering, for the throttle, and the brake. These settings, you shouldn't have to really run them unless you have maybe an issue with your wheels. So I'm going to explain each of these just very briefly. So steering dead zone is very simple. As the name indicates, it is a dead zone. So let's say if you put that on 25, for example, there will be a period where when you turn the wheel, there's going to be a dead zone where even if you're turning, nothing's happening because it's within that dead zone. Very simple to explain. Linearity is a different setting. So linearity, for example, is basically a delayed effect. So let's say if you're turning, for example, if you have the linearity on 50, if the wheel is 90 degrees to the right, with the linearity on 50, let's say, it means in game your wheel will be at 45 degrees angle, and it basically catches up right at the end. So it gives you basically a delay turning, and the same applies to the pedals. So if you're pressing a pedal and you're pressing it down all the way, that's going to be fine. It's going to be all the way on both settings. But if you're doing it, let's say halfway, and you've got the linearity on 50%, in game the throttle will be only 25, and then it will kind of do the last bit very aggressively, very quickly. And the opposite of that is saturation. So if you feel like you have some delay or some lag, basically if you increase the saturation, when you put your throttle down 25%, in game it will be 50. If you increase the saturation, that's pretty much the opposite effect of linearity, and dead zone is the setting where nothing happens in a certain range. It's very simple. You can apply this to steering, throttle and braking depending on possibly where your issues may lie. And then finally the main tab, and this is the force feedback section. And this one of course is very subjective, but these are the settings that I run. Small disclaimer, I do run some of these settings turned down a little bit for YouTube video purposes. As I do live commentate most of my content, I don't want many of the wheel sounds getting in the way of my commentary. Therefore, I do turn down some of the settings, but let's jump into it. So first of all, vibration and force feedback, you want that on of course, otherwise you're going to have no feeling through the wheel. The vibration and force feedback strength is on 105, a little bit more than on the default 100 this year, and maybe I could go up to 110, but 105 gives me a good feeling on this year's game. Personally, I quite like it. Like I said, maybe 110, I might go up to that soon, but anywhere between 105 and 110 I feel is a good balance in my opinion. We then move on to on-track effects, and these are everything you feel through the force feedback whilst on track. So let's say you hit a bit of debris, let's say there's marbles on the track, let's say the track's bumpy, let's say there's who knows, whatever it may be, any kind of bumps, things you feel on the tarmac, just within the white lines, that's what you're going to feel from on-track effects. Stuff like skidding the car, drifting, losing the back end, that's where you're going to feel it. So I run that on 35%. That one isn't such a loud effect on my wheel, so I can run that a bit higher, and it gives you a bit more of a feeling when things are about to happen. We then move on to rumble strip effects, aka ripple strips, aka curbs, whatever you want to call them. You know what they are. Simple as that. I've got them on 25% because I want to feel the curbs, but not too much. Again, curbs are one of those things where I would run that setting a lot higher, but that would make a lot of noise, so I don't run that particularly high. 25, to be fair, though, still gives me a good balance. It gives me enough feeling over the curbs that I know what I'm doing, and I get enough of a response from that to kind of feel when I'm doing things right or wrong. We then move on to off-track effects, and it's the opposite, of course, of the on-track effects, and this is when you go off-track, so grass, gravel, tarmac off the track as well, all those things. Mainly I've got it on 15 because that's also really, really loud, especially when you're going over gravel. The road does get quite shaky, so I don't want that. And also, I don't need to know too much what it feels like off track. Ultimately, you're not out there too often, so for me personally, it's not something I need a lot of feeling for. You can generally get the feeling if you're going to spin or not with the vibration and force feedback setting. You don't necessarily need a lot of off track to really notice that. And finally, the wheel damper, aka just the wheel weight. So basically, you notice this mainly in slow corners and also when the wheel is stationary. So this gives you much more weight and more feeling through the wheel at a lower speed, because when you're going really, really slowly, the force feedback goes very light and you don't feel much. So if you add on 20 to this, it will give you a lot more feeling and a lot more weight, mainly. Not so much on the feeling side, more weight, I'd say. It just makes it feel like you're actually still driving something, because when you're going through slow corners, it gets so light, you just kind of turn in and hope that you can feel the back end at some point. So it just helps keep things under control, in my opinion, and it works really, really well. And then finally, the understeer enhance, and that one is on. And the reason that is, it's very simple. Basically, as the name indicates, understeer enhance, it basically exaggerates the understeer feeling once you get past a certain point. So 9 times out of 10, that's more or less around 90 degrees. So when you turn your wheel into a corner and you're going through a corner, this is basically the limit of grip. So you'll feel through the wheel where the limit is, because the second you go past it, the wheel, the understeer enhanced feature, it makes it go really, really light. So you're turning in, you're feeling the weight, and then suddenly you're kind of hitting that limit where you feel like it's going to start getting light. And if you go any more than that, you're turning too much. And what this setting does by having it on, it basically stops you from turning the wheel too much, and you know, it's basically pointless, because once you go past a certain point, all you're doing is just picking up more understeer and overheating your tires. So it's a very good feature to know where the limit is when it comes to pushing these cars to the max, and it's a good indication to see how far you can really push your car. But guys, that is it really. It's very simple. The main thing on this year's game, of course, just like last year, is this tab right here, the vibration and force feedback one, and this is what can make or break the game in terms of whether you enjoy it or hate it. I personally love it. I think it's a massive step up from 2019. It feels great. These settings complement it beautifully, and I really hope you guys try these out. Again, just a reminder, run 360 degrees rotation, very important. That's the 1-to-1 realistic rotation they have in game. And like I said, don't change any settings in your programs. Literally just change stuff in game. Don't use the Thrustmaster software or Logitech software or Fanatec software. Keep those settings all default unless you really need the help. Just make sure your rotation is 360 degrees. But guys, that is it from me here today in this video. If you enjoyed it and you found it informative, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And also subscribe if you are new, guys, for daily Formula 1 content on the channel. And also finally check out the 2 videos on your screen as my voice starts to go and let go. So I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, and I will leave you guys for now, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. But until then, it's goodbye from me.